Hi everyone, welcome back to Bible Journaling with Leanne. Today we're going to be in Mark chapter 9 and we're looking at verses 14 to 29. And I just wanted to dive right in with the Bible passage today. When they came to the disciples, they saw a great crowd among them and scribes arguing with them. And immediately all the crowd, when they saw him, were greatly amazed and ran up to him and greeted him. And he asked them, "What are you arguing about with them?" And someone from the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I brought my son to you, but he has a spirit that makes him mute. And whenever it seizes him, it throws him down, and he foams and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. So I asked your disciples to cast it out, and they were not able." And he answered them, "O faithless generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? Bring him to me." And they brought the boy to him. And when the spirit saw him, immediately it convulsed the boy, and he fell to the ground and rolled about, foaming at the mouth. And Jesus asked the father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And he said, "From childhood. And it has often cast him into the fire and into the water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us." And Jesus said to him, if you can, all things are possible for the one who believes." Immediately the father of the child cried out and said, "I believe, help my unbelief." And when Jesus saw that a crowd came running together, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, "You mute and deaf spirit, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." And after crying out and convulsing him terribly, it came out, and the boy was like a corpse, so that most of them said, "He is dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he arose. And when he had entered the house, his disciples asked him privately, "Why could we not cast it out?" And they said to them, "This cannot be driven out by anything but prayer." And for this passage today, I just wanted to really immerse myself into the story. And so I put myself in position of being the father of this child. How would I be wanting to react if I was him? That verse 23 and verse 24. And Jesus said to them, "If you can, all things are possible for one who believes." Immediately the father of the child cried out and said, "I believe, help my unbelief." And for me, I just imagine dropping to my knees in front of Jesus and crying out for him to look at me and to help me and to understand that I desire to believe, that I desire to do this with him in his power. And so I'm just really sketching out a picture of me on my knees. I use a really, really light pencil to do this. I don't know how much of it you can see, but I'm just sketching those shapes that I need to in order to be able to draw myself on my knees in front of Jesus. I looked a bit stooped, so I decided just to make myself a bit taller. It's always easier to draw a person from behind than it is in front because faces are really hard. But I like drawing a person from behind, and I'm just trying to get an impression that this is me. So my hair's growing longer and longer in lockdown, so it's all the way down my back at the moment. And I'm just going to paint myself wearing my favourite red dress. Partly because it's much easier to draw kneeling, or a person kneeling in a dress than it is in jeans and a t-shirt, which is what I'm really wearing most of the time at the moment, because the creases and the fabric kind of covers up the legs. So painting a person, I'm not confident enough just to go straight in and go really bold with my colours. I'm really building it up very slowly in layers, adding a little bit at a time, a bit more contrast, a bit more colour, and gradually building it up. You saw at the start I had a version that I'd done to practice sketching it through in pencil, and then here I am just painting it and trying to get it all looking more and more vivid with more and more texture to it. I'm not aiming for the colour to be a flat colour, but a colour that kind of shows the movement of the fabric and the way that I'm sitting. You can see the bottoms of my feet just poking out behind me, and then I just draw the arms in so that they look like they're tucked in front of me. just use a really pale flesh tone. I've got a very pale skin tone. And then to add some shadow and contrast, I use a lilac. I know that sounds really strange and alien, but I promise you that on a pale skin tone, it just creates that illusion of shadow. So I always use a lilac to create my shadows when I'm working with kind of a light skin tone, although it works with a dark one too, and you can probably get away with going a bit more into the purples if you've got a darker skin tone. So just going back into the hair, back into the dress, back into the hair, back into the dress, just building up those layers of colour until I'm happy with how I'm looking. It's always tricky drawing yourself and working out how honest you want to be. I'm not the slimmest girl, so I didn't want to portray myself too falsely. But a dress is quite a forgiving way to paint yourself. So this is me, just kneeling, falling before Jesus, desperate for him to just forgive me of my unbelief. And I wanted to paint the background of myself like there's something dark behind me, like behind is the darkness. There's some reason, there's something that's been holding me back, and that's why I've been sitting in my unbelief. There's history here to this moment. There's a desire to be in the light, to be closer to Jesus, to be following in his ways, but there's equally that sense of something's gone on beforehand. There's darkness behind, which is making it hard for me just to believe, just to follow him straight away. Now I find it really interesting the way Jesus just responds to the disciples at the end. He says to them, "This kind cannot be driven out by anything but prayer." Nothing but prayer works in this situation. I can't quite comprehend how the disciples were trying to get out a demon in any other way, really, but apparently they were. But maybe that's what we do too. I think during this time in lockdown, I've been learning so much about prayer, and the fact that when there's not all those other people around us to help us or to run to, I more quickly go to Jesus to be my source of help, and I seek him for healing of those little bits and pieces that I normally maybe would talk to somebody about. Instead, I'm going to him in prayer and asking him to help me straight away, instead of doing that as the last thing I'd do. And learning that prayer needs to be my first response. It needs to be what I want to do first when things go wrong, not what I want to do last. And here in this situation, we find Jesus' disciples learning that lesson too, that to get through these really difficult situations, to help families in desperate need, the only thing we can do is to pray. The only thing we need to do is to pray. So I'm just using this paintbrush. This is my favourite way of lettering. I find pens can be really tricky, but I've always preferred lettering with a paintbrush because that's how I first learned. And I'm just lettering the word prayer in gold, because that's the source of light, that's the source of life in this situation. Our prayers are what's going to help us in those times where the darkness seems to be coming in, and all the other routes that we've tried, which we hoped would find a solution for our problems with, they're closed. But prayer has the answers. Not complicated prayers. We didn't see Jesus say anything complicated at all. He just said to the spirit, "You mute and deaf spirit, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." There wasn't anything complicated in that. There doesn't need to be anything complicated in our prayers. We just need to say, "Father God, just come and meet us in this testing time. Come and meet us in our unbelief. Come and meet us in our fear, in our anxiety, in our challenges that we're facing right now. Come so we don't have to do this alone, without you, but come so we walk this path with you." So I'm just finishing off my title. It just says only by prayer. And then I add a few lines for me to be able to journal my prayer on later. As in this Interleave Bible, I always add a prayer into my Bible journaling page and just commit everything that I've been working through and trying to understand to God. So just add in a quick shadow around all these letters just to make them pop off the page a bit more, make them stand out. Before I add those journaling lines in, and that's the page finished for today. So I will ask you, as you read that passage, where do you find yourself? Which characters do you most resonate with? And where would you be sitting or standing? And try and think about capturing you in this passage.